Go.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? Well, you get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method, and that is just the smartest way that you can use statistics, folks. It's letting the statistics guide you to an answer rather than cherry picking statistics to back up what you're already thinking. Oh, as soon as I said that, Professor, you knew people in the fantasy football world that like to use those statistics like a drunk uses a light pole. And joining me as he does each and every week, he is the fantasy professor. He's a real professor. It's John Bush. John, it is an exciting time for everybody in fantasy football because it's NFL Combine time. And after looking at some 40 times and watching guys in shorts and t-shirts perform, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of overreactions in the week ahead.
Well, overreactions usually means mispricing of ADP and best ball and redraft, and that's always good if we can spot that. So we should be able to collect for that. So we hope people hype it all up and get cranky and measuring, fingertip length and, thumbnail hardness and whatever else their measurement in biology, Dennis. And it's comical, some of it, from my perspective, having had a physiology class or two in my time. I think there's a lot of people probably haven't had physiology of the human and making all sorts of pronouncements and whatnot. And it's kind of funny, people that at least have a just a background in physiology a little bit. And it's interesting. I'm letting the experts tell me what I need to know, right? So, haha, that's a yuck.
And I saw already some really weird comments about what's going on. And, Jeremiah Love hasn't even hit the field yet, but he will undoubtedly be the number one running back. I'm not even sure if he's running 40 and doing all the stuff at the combine because he really doesn't have anywhere to go but down in his draft class right now. But I heard one guy came out and he said unequivocally, if Jeremiah Love lands with the Kansas City Chiefs, he is going to fly up the rankings and be RB16 this year, and he'll be worth it. And I thought about that. And I
Okay.
thought, let's check what the current ADP is before we know where Jeremiah Love is going to land.
Right.
He's RB11 right now
Yeah.
on FPPC.
Yeah.
So if you're going to pronounce it, now I don't know what he is over on Underdog and Drafters and any of the other best ball sites. Maybe he's like RB22 or whatever. But if I was going to make a pronouncement like that, I would do some research of several sites and see where he is priced now because he's already priced above where this expert says he's going to surge to.
Yeah.
Well, surge means up, right?
Well,
In fantasy football terms. I
well,
mean,
if you're a crawfish, it means flipping backward, Dennis. So maybe it's a
oh,
crawfish's surge.
oh,
You see?
there's a
You scoot
possibility.
backwards, a lobster and a crawfish.
Just never know. Maybe the guy's just into seafood. Seafood.
Maybe.
Maybe that's it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just thought it was strange that we're already hearing these great pronouncements. And I saw another person. Oh, the wide receivers are going to actually drop in ADP once we know where they're landing. And I thought about that. I was like,
Okay.
isn't isn't the time of most uncertainty before we know where guys are going to land? I would think that was logical, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't the price tags right now be about as cheap as you're going to get them for some of
Um,
these guys?
I think that's the case.
And there might be some who are
I'm sorry.
overpriced. They
Hmm.
might be overpriced right now. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I think just the logical thought process is that guys are going to be, we're going to have a better idea of player impact in that first year. And that's not to say that, we're thinking dynasty. I don't really care what a guy does as much the first year. I'm looking at, can he hit the chart in the first 3 years where he's an effective player?
Hmm.
Obviously, earlier the better. But if it's year two, for instance, JSN, I knew he was being drafted into a situation that was kind of dicey. Two really good wide receivers ahead of him on the depth chart.
Hmm.
Didn't really expect a huge year one, but I figured if he's good and these contracts are coming up for guys, that they'll free him up. So I had no problem drafting JSN very, very high, even though the landing position was bad. But before his landing position, and I didn't have much of any of him in redraft that first year because I didn't like the competition. And just like the year before, didn't have much of Rome, or just a year later, didn't have much of Roma Dunze. Didn't like the competition. But with Roma Dunze being there, I was not as high on DJ Moore that year, that kind of thing. So you look at stuff and you're going, man, it gets me worried when there's a crowded wide receiver room. But I still think we should know more about these guys after the NFL draft, and we know where these guys are going to be, what their competition level is going to be for a starting spot. But the experts proclaiming that this will be the best prices you're going to get on these guys, they're not going to change much. And that was kind of also going against what you're saying. This is the best value you're going to see. They're not going to change much. Okay, you just contradicted yourself. I just, this time of the year is so fun to watch some of the comments being made because I'm not sure people really even think about what they're saying. They're just saying something different every day so they can have something to claim as a hit later on.
Yes, it can. So I wonder if do headlines get more clicks if they're positive or negative or
Ooh.
neutral? I mean, that would be if that was what I was trying to generate. You definitely don't want to say anything. You want to hint big, uh, you know, big movement in player X. It's like, okay, is that up? Is that down? I guess I better find out. I mean, so I think it's all smoke and mirrors right now. It's kabuki theater. It's, if I'm an agent for some of these guys, I'm not making pronouncements other they're the best ever, right? You're not saying, boy, they're pretty good, except, I mean, you don't ever, it's like, a job interview. What is your weakness, right? They say in a job interview, what do you say? And I always heard the best response is, well, I'm a workaholic. I work too hard, and of course the boss is rubbing their, oh yeah, I like that. I want them to work, more than I pay them. So that was, I heard, was the weakness you were supposed to, begrudgingly reveal. So if I'm their agent, yeah, he works too hard in the gym and he's, 24/7 on all this versus hanging out, on the yacht, swilling beer and getting in trouble TMZ and all the other gossip sites. So that doesn't help your cause. So you're the hardest working ever. You're the hardest working person in as a rookie, whatever. So all these rookies are the hardest one ever. So I'm just Dennis. It's going to be overreaction. It's going to be something that we're going to have to price. And I think having and using metrics like you and I try to use and look at reference class forecasting. What have other rookies done? What is an expectation?
Yes.
And I think the smart folks, there's some sharp folks out there, Dennis, you and I know some, and they understand, what have rookies done and not done in their first year. And you need to know that. You don't need to you cannot look in a vacuum at any situation. You got to think a population, right? That's why I use the box and whisker concept. It's good to see a population to see what happened with rookies, and track that. And I know career arc and these kind of things. What a good rookie. What's an expectation? If I'm a dynasty player, when do they go south, right? When do I get rid of the hot potato? I mean, there's a lot of questions, and this is the time where that should be on your radar is, when the rookie has an ADP of say RB11, what's been a historic result for that for year one versus say year two, three, four? I mean, that's when you look at the data and get a feeling for what's gone on in the past. I understand everybody's an individual, but the best you can do is have kind of a guide or a roadmap to guess. And I think that's where you start. It's not where you end, but it's where you start. It's your opportunity index, same concept. You put it together and you're trying to make a probability estimate of what their opportunity is. Therefore, we're thinking opportunity means higher or lower ADP than their price. Should we buy or sell or pass or not? So that's all part of what I was trying to cause you to jump in last year was your opportunity. So I'm going to turn it around to you. Last year, you did an opportunity. How much of the impact of the combine was on your opportunity index? Or do you
Very little.
remember?
Very little.
Very
Very
little.
little indeed. So here's what I look for in the combine, and before I go there, this is why. Uh, this is when you look at data from a combine.
Mhm.
In my opinion, you we look at the wrong things. Okay,
Okay.
I think too many people look at the wrong things. They want to look at these blazing 40 speeds, and that's all they're going to measure on. And that's not how I look at this data. I don't say, okay, he was a 4.25 or 4.32, 40 guy. He's that much better than a guy who did a 4.4. No, maybe he's just better at track and field than the guy who ran the 4.4. But what I do look for are little benchmark numbers because the data has shown that a successful player at a particular position, a player is more likely to be successful as whatever position if he does X in the X or better in the 40, or in the case of linemen in the 10, the first 10 yards. It's shown. Like if you look at all the guys who are the best at their position, best like guards in the league, they all had something in common. A high percentage of them were under 1.9 in that first 10 yards of a 40-yard dash. They had that explosiveness off the line. But the 40 time doesn't mean anything because they're not ever going to be in a situation where they're running 40 yards down the field. Like,
Right.
that's not a regular part of their job. But a wide receiver, like, if I want a wide receiver, I want a guy who's going to be in the 4.6s or faster.
Mm-hmm.
If he's in a 4.7 40, I don't care how illiterate he is at running track and field. First of all, I think these guys are getting a lot more coaching on how to run the 40 than they did maybe 10, 15 years ago. I think their agents are smart. They understand these times. One of the pieces of data that came out yesterday when I was watching the combine, and, NFL Network does a fabulous job. They've got about 10 announcers there, I think, to cover it from every angle. Yet not a single one of their people showed an understanding of data. And this is why I say that. They were bragging about this being the fastest class at each position so far in the history of the combine.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there's two reasons for that. One is, yes, athletes are faster at these higher poundages. When you see a 260-pound guy doing 4.5 40s, it's pretty impressive. So there has been a change in how athletes are being developed in football.
Right.
There's more speed in the game. We see it every week.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it with Seattle's defense in the Super Bowl. There's more speed in the game than there was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that's contributing to faster guys is agents that are smart enough to say, hey, you got to train for this.
Right.
You got to train for the combine. We know what drills are going to be in the combine. It's not a mystery. You need to train on these. And most of the guys are doing that. But there's a third element to this fastest class thing that should have been obvious.
Right.
Look how many of the top players are bowing out of running a 40. Why did they do that? Because they didn't think they could run a fast time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got all of the guys who think they can't run a fast time bowing out, and you got all of the guys who know they're going to run a pretty fast time that are running, your population has been selected. So it's not that this draft class is the fastest ever necessarily. It's that they're the smartest ever because the slowest guys ain't running. And not a single analyst that's being hired by the network pointed that out. Now, I know part of that is because they want the hype of the combine being such a big deal because they want more viewers. It's all capitalism, But I would have thought somebody would step up and say, we're seeing more guys opting out of the 40 than we used to. Maybe those are the slow guys, the guys that didn't think they could bust a 4.45, that are, really 4.55 guys, and they didn't want to be so much slower than others at their position. And they understand that it really doesn't matter. Like a tenth of a second in the 40 is not going to be the difference between a great wide receiver. I mean, Jerry Rice did not run an impressive 40. Was he an impressive wide receiver? You bet. Could he break away? Yes, he had great football speed. When you're in pads and helmet, that's a different speed than in shorts and a t-shirt, and track shoes for the, guys are wearing track shoes. They're not wearing football cleats anymore. Guys used to come to the combine with one set of cleats. They're football cleats. Now they're coming with special shoes for every thing that they're doing, from the high jump. You see them. You see them in different shoes for their vertical, for their broad jump, for the 40, and for their drills on the field. They're bringing a whole bag full of shoes, it seems like. And that's why the 40 times are getting faster. It's not that the athletes are that much better, it's just that they're smarter to understand that somebody's paying attention to these 40 times and we better be quick.
Well, I could look at some of these, just to see. I see the tight ends that Sadiq or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
4.39.
Yeah.
The next person is 4.51.
Yeah.
So that's full second or more higher or faster. So that's got to be noticed, right?
Yes. Yeah. A tenth faster, 1200ths faster. That's a significant speed.
Right.
What's
So,
even more impressive, he compared on all of his drills,
mhm,
he compared to some of the better wide receivers that we've seen coming out of the draft.
right.
His performance was better than DK Metcalf.
Really?
Yes. All of his numbers that he did, the broad jump, and DK Metcalf was a workout freak at the combine. He didn't run the fastest 40 time, but everything
Right.
else he did was really, really good. And his 40 time was sufficient.
Right.
Sadiq beat all of his data as a tight end,
Mm-hmm.
carrying another 15 pounds versus what DK is a big guy.
Right.
Sadiq's even bigger. Sadiq is a real tight end who does not necessarily need to play on the line of scrimmage.
Right.
He's going to be a freak matchup guy in the NFL. Does that mean he's going to be a superstar on the field? Who knows? But his numbers are more impressive than just about any tight end that's come out in recent years.
Right.
He also backs it up with some good tape. Like, he wasn't the primary receiver for his college teams, still put up some pretty good stats. But he did not run some of the drills. He didn't run the gauntlet drill, which I thought, but he didn't run any of the on-field stuff. He just ran the 40 and all the other exercises, the vert jump and the broad jump and stuff like that. And he says, I'm good. I don't need to run the field drills, which is an interesting move because there are a lot of guys that didn't run the 40 that ran the field drills. He was one that went the opposite direction. I
Right.
would have liked to have seen him in the gauntlet drill. That's the one where the guy has to start with his back to the ball. They throw him a ball. Then he
Right.
changes, he looks the other side and they throw it. Then the ball's like on him immediately. That drill is how I found Puka Nacua. That drill showed that Harold Fannin Jr. was an exceptional talent. That drill showed that the sun god was going to be the sun god. That drill is probably the best drill for showing quick hands, the ability to catch a football, because they throw like 7 of them at you as you run the line.
Right.
And the coaches get on the guys if they're not going full speed. And it is a timed event. So you can look up the data who did the fastest times. Like the 3 cone drill is another one that I think is very good for running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. It shows your agility, your ability to change direction. That's another good drill. There are a lot of the things that go on at the combine that do not get as much attention as the 40, and I think they're more important than the 40-yard dash. But the 40-yard dash is like the show off thing.
Here's the tight ends. I did a quick box and whiskers. Here's the Kenyon right here, and here's
Wow.
the slowest slug.
Yeah.
So the mean was about 4.6. So that about right there. The average probably is 4.6. So these are the ones uh, above the average here. And so the question I would have, if I was going to study this, I would look at probably this block. I would look at these people and the ones below into two groups and ask questions about their first year MVP or com, Dennis. I mean, this data's out here. I just hadn't fished for it. I need interns, but we could put a lot of this together. But again, nobody pays me or you to do this. But if I was heavily into dynasty, folks, I know I'd be fishing in this pond. But when I see data like this is how I see the data. And that's how I want it. This the probabilities here. This is, but we need some more metrics here. Like I said, what did they do? And remember, your opportunity index could be part of that as well. You could have this and your opportunity index right here, what you think. But anyway, here he is, 439, and then the rest of them, these other four were, pretty high too, and but not like this one. So I would argue this one, and for dynasty, is going to get overplayed, and these I would look hard to see if there's opportunity. You know what I'm saying? Some of these, maybe you might get a bargain. So that would be my take on the 40 would be I would look at past years. I would ask questions about these that are not just the showcase. This guy, he's showcasing. Everybody's going to be on
Oh
him, but
yeah.
but
Yeah.
what about these other ones?
Yeah. In the
The bargains might be here for Dynasty. I don't know that. That's how I would be concerned. In other words, down here at the bottom, Dennis, I would look at these and say, okay, what's happening here? Especially this guy, the slow 4.9. Here he is right here. Poor guy, Miles. And, is there an instance where somebody has done this as a tight end and made a splash? In other words, can we ignore this? If I had 10 years of data in the 40, the slowest tight end, what did they do in the last 10 years? The fastest, the ones above and ones below. That would be some of the metrics I would want to investigate. So I would urge people, if you're really into dynasty, is to investigate that. So that's how I would look at it, is from a data point of view.
Yeah, and the way I've used this data in the past is sort of similar to looking at and saying, okay, something in the 4.6s, that's acceptable. Like it's not going to cost you a chance to be a good player. And I know that because there's been a lot of guys in that 4.65
Mhm.
and 4.6, 3 that have gone on to be good football players. But
Right.
the chances of a guy running a 4.8 and or a 4.9 and being successful in the league probably a lot lower. Like most of your really good tight ends have
Mhm.
graded in that 4.6s and faster.
Right.
Now the super speed guys, I don't know if they have an advantage over everybody else. So I love the way you're looking at that data of saying, okay, this is the most expensive guy. Everybody knows that's the glory kid, That's
Yeah.
that's the guy who's going to be overpriced more
Yes.
likely than not. But when I'm looking at the combine, I'm looking at, okay, is he for a tight end? Is he in the 4.6s? Yeah. Okay. If he's faster than the 4.6s, he's all of a sudden on my radar. Now, does he
Right.
run a good gauntlet? That's what I like to see. That guy with three names, John Michael something or other, he came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
He looked really good. John Michael Gillenborg from
Right.
Wyoming, 6'5", 251, and ran some good times, looked okay in the gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
The kid from Ohio State, Max Clare, is another one where I thought he was just a blocker. Like, I did not know that he was that good. When I watched his games,
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't like the primary guy. He did okay. I mean, he wasn't, his stats were okay,
Right.
but he's ranked by football guys as tight end 3 in this class.
Mm-hmm.
He's a junior, young guy, 22,
Mm-hmm.
coming out. I like those early departures
Mm-hmm.
from college
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, we've seen that work quite well in the past. It's just very interesting. You got to look at the combine, not just looking for the highlights, but for looking for those sleeper guys. The kid from Michigan, Klein was his last name.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he actually he left Germany when he was 15 to come over to the States to play football.
Right.
Has Marlon Klein. He's been behind guys like Loveland, Colston Loveland,
Mm-hmm.
until last year. He put up a decent year. He looked really good. So I'll be taking a shot late in dynasty drafts for some of these guys because depending on where they land, that opportunity will be key. Remember, Aronde Gadsden last year
So, Dennis,
was
I
an
just
opportunity
pulled
guy.
this out. This is Pro Football Focus. This is the combine results. So last year, it's got, you can sort, and by the way, you can get all this for free.
Mm-hmm.
Just put it in your own data. You
Yep.
can start your own. If I'm a dynasty, folks, and I'm not, I'd have this data. Look, we're talking years, 25 years,
Yep.
Dennis. I'd own this data.
Yep.
If somebody put some money in my pocket, this could be a project. We could do a poster, but I was trying to find the tight end. So last year, Dennis,
Look at Loveland.
Tyler Warren didn't
Okay.
even do a 40.
No, no.
Mason Taylor. The next guy is Joshua Simon, 4.65. He was the best. And here's a 4.63, 4.69. I'm not recognizing any of these names.
No, no. There's a lot of misses in that data because a lot of these
Gadsden
guys.
didn't even do
And
one either.
look at Fannin, 4.71. Is
Yeah,
that a
that's
4.71
not.
for him?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's that's below average, Dennis.
but really liked him in the
Hmm.
drills,
Yeah.
and that's why he got on the radar. But
Uh-huh.
this is great data. This is
Vertical
actually,
bench, broad jump, cone, shuttle. So, you could do height, weight, all sorts of stuff, Dennis. But it's all free, folks. I would just be eating this data up if I had
yeah, and
time.
yeah, I'm very intrigued to look and see if you can find, based on guys that we know succeeded, and
Yeah.
then look up their 40 times and come
Hmm.
up with a, hey, he better be better than this in the 40.
Yeah,
Um,
we could think about it. I could download 25 years, give you a box and whisker for all the 40, and then look at that we would need, their data and whatnot. But It actually shows the pick as well. In other
Yes.
words, how high did they go? What round did they go? Kind of thing. I mean, you could do all this stuff. It's right here.
And what we know from the past, and yes, there's always those exceptions. There's always those guys who get drafted late or don't get drafted at all
Yeah,
that succeed. We've seen that. But the earlier you go in that first round,
yeah.
the higher the hit percentages in fantasy football. And when I say hit percentages, it's having a 80 or more MVP in the first 3 years. There is a higher hit percentage. Um, just is. But it doesn't mean that you cannot hit at different levels of the draft, different 40 times, whatever. That has to go into the opportunity. Before we wrap up today, I just want to show folks a little glimpse into the data that
Mhm.
I'm looking at. And I don't know if you have that you can share with folks, or you want me to share it. Uh,
Uh,
um, the my data that I just sent you
oh, okay.
about the team chart research.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
last year I did this, but I only did it on pen and paper. Okay, I
okay.
did not do it sophisticatedly in an Excel sheet. But the
Here
the
it is.
first thing to look at when you're trying to figure out opportunity for this year are all the changes. In addition to player changes,
You've
I
got
included
coach changes.
head coach and offensive coordinator. And some of these offensive coordinators are not the play caller. Okay? And I understand that. But most of them are. And the key is, if you look at the ones in red,
Hmm.
those are the ones that have changed as far as head coach and offensive coordinator. As far as the players go, those are the guys in red are either not contractually obligated to the team, or they have not had a sufficient enough MVP index in the last 2 years
Hmm.
to think that they would be fantasy viable. So look at Atlanta, for
Hmm.
instance. You got two locks, and everything else is opportunity,
Hmm.
because we don't know who the quarterback's going to be next year. We don't know who the backup running back is, because Algier is becoming a free agent. So we look at Robinson, and he is obviously the lock as their RB1. London's their lock as their WR1. But his
And a
MVP last year,
75,
yeah,
Dennis, is not strong.
no, no, and he had an 88 as his career best. So
If
he's got to
they
he's got to
drafted,
step up.
yeah, if they drafted another wide receiver that was really talented in the first round,
It's
I would be
possible.
concerned about sharing this load here with
y- y-
London. There's some risk depending on the draft.
yes, and that's exactly what you're picking up on. Is exactly how I feed the opportunity index.
I think
I'm
it's
looking.
dangling, Dennis. It's kind of like, you're out in a swamp and you stick your finger in the water and just flash it. That's kind of dangerous, Dennis. It can be snapped off by a gator or a snapping turtle. It looks like London's kind of dragging around the water a little bit. Something could take him down.
Especially for a guy who's going in the top 10 at wide receiver.
Yeah, that looks kind of costly there. I'd be a little worried.
So if they do invest in a wide receiver, it could be the T Higgins or Devonta Smith thing all over again,
Yeah,
where you've
could.
got you've got a guy who is a very talented player, but
Uh-huh.
he's never been dominant enough. And some of that is quarterback play,
Mhm.
without a doubt. But how much of it is maybe he's just a very good wide receiver, not an elite wide receiver. But if you go down the list,
Mm-hmm.
look how many are in black.
Yeah, I just want to let you know
Very,
Drake
very few.
London by my com is a 66. So he is 26th
Oof.
in com last year.
Yeah, he was 17th in MVP,
Yeah.
and his upside is a little better. His big game potential, he was 7th. So that's why he gets drafted where he gets drafted, because his big game potential is there, but his consistency has never been top 10
And
in
that's
his
bad.
career.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not, again, excellent ball player, but not elite. He has not lived up to his pricing in fantasy football. Any of his, he's been in the league 4 years, and he hasn't lived up to his ADP 4 years in a row. But if you look down this chart,
Uh-huh.
very few players locked in for next season. You know, if you look at Baltimore, they've got, you know, 4 guys that are basically hit the magic numbers. And again, I'm looking at either this year or last year,
Mm-hmm.
a season where they played 6 or more games and
Mm-hmm.
had a significant enough MVP to tell me, okay, that's a guy who's locked in as a starter. Now, again, doesn't mean they're locked in as WR1
Mm-hmm.
for WRs. For running back, it is okay. This is a guy who's going to be either first or second on his team.
Mm-hmm.
And Ali probably should have been in red because he did not have a full season. But Henry is locked. Flowers is going to be one of the top 2 wide receivers on the team. There's no
Mm-hmm.
question. Even if they bring in another wide receiver, he's going to be in that top 2 for his team. But very few guys locked in right now when you look at it. So the opportunity index is going to be wide open throughout the league this year. It's going to be another situation where when we see free agents dropping and we see different guys added, I mean, Buffalo probably has the least competition of anybody right now,
Mm-hmm.
because we know the quarterback, we know the first running back, we know the second running back, we know the tight end, and we know that one of their 2 wide receivers. Everything else is wide open.
Mm-hmm.
They will probably bring in another wide receiver to compete in
Mm-hmm.
that room,
Right.
but they're not going to add another running back. Or,
No.
day 3 will be as early as I think they will go into the running back market. So this is how I like to use this data to say, okay, where are the openings right now?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the guys? Who are the spots we should be looking at? And then when I see head coaching and offensive coordinator changes, I'm like, boy, that's even more of an area where I'd be concerned about the turnover, because a new coach sometimes means a new starter. So, but when I did this, what I was intrigued about is seeing how many teams, and there aren't many, are locked in at various positions. And that shows how wide open competition's going to be. Now, Chicago, you get down to a team like that, there's no way they're drafting offense early. They're feeling pretty good about their offense. Their defense is where they're going to probably be spending most of their time in the draft. And when I say most of their time, I'm talking about those first 4 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I would think they'll go all defense or they'll go offensive line. And that's how I like to use this data, because I like to look through these teams and before the draft and before free agency have an idea where they might be making some moves. And that way, when they do make those moves,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised. I've already leaned into that opportunity and I understand where they're going to be, where we're going to see the changes and where we're not. But that's the first process when it comes to opportunity. And this year I decided to share it with everybody.
Yeah, but we still hadn't put this data out. You're just showing.
Well, showing it off, but we'll show the process here.
Yeah.
Probably
Okay.
next week, I'll have an article out that'll
Okay.
look at different openings and different, I'll be making my predictions of
Okay.
where I'm, if a guy goes in the first three rounds of the draft,
Right.
those are the guys that I am my first look guys
Mhm.
in Dynasty. I do believe draft capital means something, and it's not the only thing. But if you're spending a very high draft pick on a guy, you expect them to succeed. They're going to get a longer leash than a guy who's coming in as a sixth or seventh or an undrafted free agent. Doesn't mean those guys aren't worth looking at. Kyle Menange was a seventh round pick. He was one of my favorite running backs to draft late last year because the opportunity was wide open behind Swift. And that's the way I like to look at opportunity. It's not just, oh, Bijan Robinson is a beast. He's not going anywhere. It's who's likely to back up Bijan Robinson. They're probably grabbing somebody in the draft or a cheap free agent because they only have Carter behind him right now.
Mhm.
Algier is a free agent. So I'm looking at Atlanta and I'm like, they're going to add a running back. They're going to add a wide receiver. Now we know Pitts is going to be franchise tagged, so they're not looking at tight end, but I don't have it coded because it's not official yet. But once it's official, I update the chart, move a guy from red to black, and now I've got a better idea of landing positions. I don't care about tight end two on a team unless the tight end one has no value. If the tight end one has no value in fantasy football, like a Sanders with Carolina or Tremble, right now they don't have a tight end that I would be drafting in any format. If they add a Sadiq or a Stowers or a Max Clare or somebody like that who's caught my attention at the tight end position, even a guy who doesn't, but is going in the first three rounds, I'm paying attention because that's, if a team is spending a top three draft pick on somebody, they're expecting that guy to start sooner than later. But that's my first look at opportunity for this season.
My comment is that, Dennis, this is a top-down view,
Yes.
and I always support that type of analysis first. It's not the end, folks. Okay. It's just the beginning, but he's setting the table for the whole meal, not just the appetizer. And I think it's harder to get the click on the broad view because people want the hot dog, right? So they only want to advertise, the hot dog, not the kraut or the hot relish or the mustard. I mean, just hey, and they're missing the bigger concept, and that's why I've argued top down, you know, for a long time. And Dennis, you may not be thinking like that, but that's how you're thinking. From my view, you're looking top down, and that I think is a great way to look at the teams. And now that if you share this, I'll be able to ask you questions about after the draft. I said, well, Dennis, here's the MVP from last year, and it's kind of weak looking, and they drafted what you think, In other words, I can probably start imagining what your opportunity index may start looking like in July and August.
Yeah. And again, the key is I want a guy who can be RB1 or RB2
Hmm.
or QB1 or tight end one. Like,
Hmm.
I don't care about the backups at tight end and quarterback. I do care about the backups at running back and wide
Got to.
receiver.
Yeah.
At wide receiver, I'll go all the way down to wide receiver 3
Hmm.
because that guy's got a chance with one injury
To be up
to
there.
either of two guys to be fantasy significant. But if he is the WR3 on a team and he has not shown in his first couple of years an MVP index worthy of keeping around, then I'm discounting that guy pretty fast.
Hmm.
But you notice I look at the last 2 years of MVP, not just last year.
Hmm.
I'm giving guys the benefit of the doubt of having a bad year. And I'm looking at the number and I'm saying, with what he did in 24 and 25, can he reach 80 this year? That's how I'm looking at the data. It's already sort of a forecast picture of, is he capable of hitting 80 or higher in MVP
Hmm.
at the wide receiver running back position or a quarterback? At tight end, I got to go all the way down to like 50
Right.
because there's not that many great tight ends.
Hmm.
And again, it's keeping a little bit of flexibility, but not too flexible. So when I looked at Green Bay, for instance, Watson and Reed ended up in black because I think they do have the upward potential of an 80. Reed has hit it before. Watson has come close with a 70. So I looked at both of those guys and said, yeah, they could hit 80. Matthew Golden, high draft pick last year, first rounder. He did not make the cut because he had a 0
Hmm.
last year. That was not good enough to make my cut. Do I think he's got the potential to still be a good player in fantasy football? Yes, I do. But he did not pass that cut. So technically, I look at Green Bay and I say, wouldn't shock me if they added another wide receiver. Not day one, but maybe day two. And that's how I kind of like to look at this data to get that first glimpse on where a guy might be.
So if you're in Excel and you've got Dennis's sheet, this is what I would do. I would have the metrics here, and you can look at the orange here and kind of see what's what here. I see Swift doing pretty good, Menanje, Loveland. So you can spot the the different players. So who is this Walker here?
That's Jade Walker, who is a undrafted free agent, played just a couple of games last year,
Yeah,
but
but
he had a good value
yeah,
in MVP for his, but he only had like 2 full games played last year.
yeah, but
So
he's better than Adumze.
he had a good small data sample work
Yeah, well,
because he had a couple of
that's we're,
games with a touchdown.
yeah, we're looking for a an edge, Dennis, and that
Yes.
catches my attention. So, folks, this is another way to look at the top down, is look across here at things here, Dennis. So that's another way uh, to look at this. So just wanted to show people, um, how I would probably break down this data. I like visual. So this, gets my attention. uh, for especially after the draft in, say June, put the new player there and just kind of see what they have to beat and look at historically what, if they were the first wide receiver picked and Chicago picked them, that would get my attention given what I see here, you know, uh, that would, like I said, I would expect the opportunity index to point me out that, but this is a way to kind of visualize that. I like to look at visual, folks, and this is a way to do that. So Dennis, you got good stuff here. I could, I could make you these quick charts if down the road, we might have some secret charts here for our drafting at the expo, secret stuff. We'll have to.
Always.
I'm gonna carry my fly swatter and pop them hands back, messing with our secret stuff here last year. I was throwing cheese fries at folks to keep them from their eyes on a stalk, looking at our secret stuff.
But
And
we can be bribed.
yeah, that's right.
You buy us enough
Chicken wings
wings,
and stuff. That's right. We could be
we
bribed.
we can be bribed. But head on over to the science of fantasyfootball.com. You can check out a bunch of articles from the past that show my strategy when it comes to opportunity. Hey, take a look at my opportunity index from last year and see the hits and misses I had, hoping to improve on that process this year. Head over to the sportsaffiliation.com and check out our sister show, the Data Lab, and all of the great stuff over there at the Sports Affiliation. I'm got to tell you, folks, shows every day of the week during the off season that will have you entertained. And come on back here next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.
Very